Welcome, traveler! This is Eve, and today I want to talk about the bracket system for Commander that Wizard dropped some time ago. If somehow you've been out of the loop, it's a system designed to help pickup games feel better balance-wise, and it revolves around the Game Changer list. Since it does, let's understand what this list is. Essentially, it's a watch list of cards that Wizards finds somewhat problematic for the format, but not to the point to be ban-worthy. At least, not yet. There are 40 cards in the list, and it is somewhat lacking in my opinion. It includes a bunch of tutor and fast mana, and while not including Massland Destruction, extra turns and combo pieces, those are addressed by the bracket system, to an extent. Personally, I feel like the list is too short. For example, a few of the most notable missing cards are Show and Tell, Entomb and Necropotence. Show and Tell is a famous vintage all-star, able to close the game on the spot. Entomb is a cheap and powerful tutor, and Necropotence needs no introduction, I feel. Transforming life to cards on a one-to-one basis just for 3 mana is pretty nuts in Commander. But I wanted to add a trio of cards that are a bit more controversial just to inspire a bit of discussion. I feel like they would belong in the list, but I would like to know your opinion. I would propose Skull Clamp, for example. It is an insane card advantage tool in the right deck. It is banned in both Modern and Legacy, and for some reason, Mystical Tutor into Ad Nauseam is wrong, but still Shaper Gift into Skull Clamp is not. Next, these are technically 2 cards, but I will count them as just one because they are very similar. Wheel of Fortune and Windfall are both cards that are banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage that somehow aren't seen as powerful in Commander. Wheels are very easy to break. They are amazing at refilling your hand once you dropped all the cheap ramp, and at filling your graveyard with resources in the process. Maybe not seen as problematic in casual due to the fact that getting wheeled doesn't feel bad, but when someone plays one of these cards, you should know they mean business. And these 2 are by far the best wheels in the game, in my humble opinion. Even superior to Time Twister, because reshuffling your graveyard into your deck in a 100 singleton format doesn't grant you access to some restricted cards that are legal in Vintage, like Black Lotus for example. The only reasonable argument I can understand for wheels not being here is that the best thing that goes with them, which is fast mana, is either here or in the ban list. To which I would reply, Sol Ring. The last card I want to argue about is a card that in my experience has been a menace in my playgroup to the point that I had to cut it from my decks. While the card isn't competitive at all, it would fall alongside cards in the Game Changer list like Vorinclex or Hanging Gitaxias that are not there due to their strength, but to how polarizing they can be in casual games. The card I'm talking about is Grave Pact. When this hits the table, in any kind of aristocrat deck, creatures can't survive a single turn cycle until the enchantment is dealt with. If Grave Pact isn't problematic for casual tables, I don't really know what is. But enough rambling about Game Changer list, we were originally here to talk about a bracket system. There are 5 brackets in the system, and they go from the least to the most geared to win. In brackets 1 and 2, you are supposed to follow the social contract and play no game changers. In 3, you still subscribe to the social contract, but are allowed some game changers. In 4 and 5, you play whatever and do not care about the social contract at all. I will explain what I think works and what doesn't, going from the best designed bracket to the worst designed one. Again, in my opinion. Bracket 5 is EDH. If you're wondering what Wizards added to this, I wondered that myself. EDH is the same way as it was before. The community already managed to identify the EDH community that plays to win and doesn't abide by the social contract. That checks out, but we already had this before the bracket system, so thanks I guess. Bracket 2 is pre-constructed gameplay. This is supposed to be the level of modern pre-made decks that came out with every set. Simple enough, but with a major flaw. Besides having to avoid game changer cards, we are giving no structure on how to build a deck that performs at the level of a pre-con deck. Wizards points the finger and claims that bad actors will always find ways to pub stomp, but realistically, it's not easy to build a 2 from scratch at all. If they provided a guide on how to build a 2 that isn't just buy a precon, I would be very happy with this bracket. Or at the very least, roughly how many cards you are allowed to change from a precon before it changes bracket. But as it stands, 2 is just a 3 with a game changer, plus use your better judgment. I don't feel like this is good enough. All they wanted to say with this is, if you brought a precon, you should play against other precons. That's fine for starting out, but it gets stale very quickly. Wizards, we need more to define what is a 3 versus what is a 2 besides the 3 game changer cards you're proposing. I know this is a beta, but we were expecting a little more. Bracket 1 is very weird. I personally never met someone interested in playing a Bracket 1 deck. They aren't functional if they can't perform on par with a precon. I owned a theme deck myself, which I took apart after a couple of game nights, which was a Liliana tribal deck. It played most of the cards with her referenced in either the name, art or flavor text. Was it a strong deck? No, but it had powerful cards in it that compensated the lack of synergy with raw power, making it fit the bracket fine. If you make a few concessions when building your exhibition deck, you're gonna be able to fit in more popular brackets and also have a better deck, able to cast all the bearded spells from your favorite Oops All Beards deck, while also not having games lasting 24 turns since your average game-ending threat is Chaos Lord from Ice Age. Making this category kind of irrelevant in my opinion. What use is a bracket if nobody will have a deck for it? If you build an exhibition deck, your goal isn't to win regardless, but to show off your cool idea, or how you can push the power level of a deck with a major restriction self-imposed. Having a 15% win rate, for example, over the expected 25 isn't gonna be much of an issue here. This is why I believe precon decks should be the baseline over exhibition. Way easier to find games, more functional gameplay which will lead to more enjoyment long term, and also showing new players that in Commander you can push deck building in any direction is really fun and informative to accentuate the best part of the format, which is how freely you can express yourself through deck building. Now, we get to the brackets that I feel are really poorly done. Bracket 4 is different from 5 only because Bracket 5 decks are geared to beat all the top dogs of the format, so we'll include silver bullets tailor-made with them in mind. Also, they are made with a competitive scene and scope, like a tournament. This is the only not EDH bracket where any game changer is allowed. The problem I have with this description is that I feel like most people that play fully powered decks with all the coolest toys in the format not necessarily want to play cutthroat games where you have to constantly watch out for a game-ending combo right out of nowhere, or having to slowly restart the game after somebody resolves an Armageddon. I have an Azami deck that fits most likely in this description. It is a powerful deck with a bunch of fast mana, free counter spells and even some tutors. Still, I don't run any extra turns because I feel they make for poor gameplay, nor I try to jam an extremely fast game-winning combo. And I definitely don't wanna deal with MLD, and a good chunk of my playgroup does have decks like this too. No way this category of players only exists in my bubble, right? There must be plenty who want to play high-power commander but still follow the social contract. The bracket needs to be split in two. For example, let's say I built a full-powered Homnat Locus of Rage deck. I'm playing all the fast mana, all the strongest cards to quickly overwhelm the board, but still, my deck won't ever be posing a threat nearly as quickly as someone running a World Gorger Necromancy combo. It can't compete in EDH tables ever. It's not a matter of trying to counter the meta or building for a tournament. It is a different scope entirely, and I believe we really should have a bracket for this type of decks without asking them to be tuned down. And finally, we get to the meaty part, upgraded precons bracket, number 3. If Wizards really wanted to make this bracket system function, it was going to nail this perfectly. Most enfranchised players will be running decks from around here, and what they did with this was a middle-of-the-road approach that, in my opinion, makes nobody happy. This bracket abides by the social contract and runs many staples of its archetype and strong synergies, and it's allowed to play up to 3 game-changer cards from the list. This last part is the problem I have with the bracket. Like it or not, the Game Changer list is a collection of cards that make the format perform worse long term. These cards are either so powerful that they overtake any synergy piece and neat card you may wanna run, or they dig for such cards in the pile of junk that is your average singleton 100 cards deck. When you build a deck and have these cards available, you have to make an effort to avoid them every time. And it's hard when you can make any deck that much stronger just by adding 1 or 2 extra powerhouse cards from this list, because winning feels good and it's hard to be the first one to stop including these cards when everybody else runs them. But change has to spark somewhere. This is the chance Wizard has to take it upon themselves to create a bracket that isn't just entry level, but also free of these toxic cards. Land into Soul Ring, into Chrome Mox, into tapping everything for Risk Study is a play that's legal in bracket 3 as it stands. It doesn't end the game, it just runs 2 game changers, and isn't an MLD or an extra turn chain. I would have understood limiting game changers to 1. Maybe if you hold dear card from the list, but don't want to upgrade your deck to a higher bracket just because of it, or maybe your commander is on this list. But the fact that to play Game Changers free, you need to roll to a precon level, in my opinion, is just dumb. 1 or none would have been perfect for an upgraded precon deck level of bracket. If you want to include more, go nuts and up a bracket and include as many as you wish. If you're running 2 or 3 exactly, it won't be super painful to replace them. This is my gripe with the system. They missed the mark mostly here. They made the effort to put down a well thought out list of cards that are problematic, but lacked the courage to create an environment for most people's decks to be free of them. And they did this because they were afraid to divide the community too much, is my guess. But this shows lack of confidence in their system, if they don't really use it to its full potential. As this bracket will only be what's been power level 7 for the longest time, but also will push people that want to play by the social contract above precon level to include 3 game changers to compete better in the environment. Even if they managed to police themselves before out of those cards. Of course, again, this is just my opinion. Feel free to express your take in the comments. I would love to read your thoughts on this. To conclude, I will create a system with 5 brackets still, with bracket 1 being pre-constructed decks, again with a good guide on how to build one besides just buying it off a shelf, bracket 2 being upgraded precon or optimized, which would be the same as the current bracket 3, but with only one game changer slot, then bracket 3, which will be fully powered unlimited game changer, but following the social contract and not winning on turn 2 on 3 with a combo, then bracket 4, which is basically just off-meta CEDH, and bracket 5, which would be fully fledged CEDH. But I kept rambling long enough for this video, I believe. This has been Eve, thanks for watching.